Mary, who's the mother of God, to intercede on behalf of sinners. Or if you go to the catacombs,
So they've elevated Mary above God. Do you see that? That's what they're doing? That she's the mother of God. That's above God. That's the reason why God will rain holy wrath down someday on that place. So look, this is such trickery that they're playing here, okay? So many people playing here. So were Peter and Paul hidden in these catacombs? Yes. But archaeology evidence that they find like this and then say, oh, see, the apostles were worshiping Mary. No, these were all pagan gods. Again, all the nations were practicing paganism. So there's tons of archaeology that they found and will continue to find that will support actually the Bible. But what the media does is stupid stuff like this. Forget Jesus. These Mayan gods were worshipped long before Christianity existed. Of course they did. Proving the Old Testament, proving the New Testament. Because the Israelites were not the first people. They weren't. There were tons of people. They were the first chosen people. Where God said, I'm going to build this nation. I'm going to build this people. I'm going to have these expectations. I'm going to make a covenant with them. I'm going to make it in the Old Testament, it's all about building the foundation. It's all about building the actual structure, building the tabernacle, having the rituals. Because the easiest way to bridge the Old and New Testament is the Old Testament, they're toddlers. That's the reason why it's so funny when you read a lot of it. When they get angry, the Israelites, they're ripping their clothes off like a toddler would. Yeah, so that's why God is rigid in the Old Testament. And what else is going on in the Old Testament? God's keeping his chosen people away from all this because it is going on. But what does the media do? They try to make it like, oh no, there were these other gods long before Jesus, so they must be the real thing. No, they all just prove the Bible, because it's what Jesus came to tell the world, and we're ending all this. Those that want to have ears to hear, that is. So I had asked AI, even though I just told you, but I asked AI earlier in one sentence to tell me let me get to it. If you could explain the Old Testament in one sentence, what would you say that the meaning and lesson was that God was teaching? In one sentence, the Old Testament teaches that God desires a covenantal relationship with humanity built on faithfulness, obedience, justice, and mercy, showing that true life and blessing come from loving and trusting him above all else. Okay? So then I had asked, so you have to understand the reason that he's so different in the Old Testament from the New is because in the Old Testament, he's building the actual foundation. Do you see God over there? Jesus is crowning her. It's paganism. God, there's no way around it. Like if you want to have, like we have Mount Rushmore, right? We have a statue of Abraham Lincoln. God's not against that, although I don't think he wants all this. I mean, we've gone overboard accepting all these gifts from other countries that I think are very much rooted in paganism. But regardless, stuff like that, God knows you're not bowing down to it. You're not putting flowers down to it. You're not praying to it. But this is paganism. This is what Jesus came to get rid of. Which is why Jesus turned to the woman in the crowd and said, when she said, blessed the womb and breast you fed it, and he made sure he didn't turn around and say, yes, blessed, although make sure you have a King James Bible. Because if you look online, they're changing it. They're adding a word where it says, yeah, rather. No, King James in the hard copy doesn't say yeah. But by that little thing that they do online, it's like, no, Jesus is saying, yes, Mary and God. No. So make sure you have a hard copy of the King James Bible. Again, the Catholic Church only uses their heretical Bible. Anyway, and so then I asked AI, in like basically what about the based only on the New Testament? What is God trying? What's the lesson and trying to be delivered? That the heart of the believer is portrayed as the new tabernacle or temple where God dwells by his Spirit. Jesus himself is the tabernacle among us as the true fulfillment of the Old Testament tabernacle. And through his death and resurrection, believers become the temple of the living God. And see, that's the biggest, this is where all the governments, it doesn't matter what party, all the kings, even though you've had some good kings and bad kings, and none of them ever truly wanted to let God lead. See, Jesus came so that you would follow his voice. And the churches have interfered with that. Just like the government, they act as a way to keep, because if everybody listened to God's voice instead of all these other voices that want to tell you to be united, want to tell you to follow Charlie Kirk, if everybody just followed, this is why it was so important that there was none of this bullshit. It was only God. It was only God. And that if this is why the Pharisees were not going to understand it. They were too entrenched, too dug in about the rituals and the structure and the building, which is why Jesus said, yeah, it's all nice on the outside. It means nothing inside, though. It's just a big old mess there. But when Jesus came, that's exactly what I read. You become the church then. And you're to follow his voice. The churches didn't want you to do that. Neither did the governments. Because in all honesty, then they don't, what is their role? What is their significance? But you will never get any human being here. None. That will ever do that. God knew it. That's why he said, don't love the world. Because the world isn't his. How can it be his kingdom? You got this religion that crowns her. You got a bunch of other Christian religions that took from this very religion. You got a bunch of other people that are so, they are stiff-headed. They're so stubborn. A lot of people like that they couldn't see what Jesus was doing, how the Old Testament totally bridged into the New. And that one was about the structure and the foundation and the actual building, and then going from that to it being, you are the church. But see, that doesn't serve people that are powerful and wealthy and have control of people from churches or government. It doesn't matter. Even if they're good people, they have to keep control. Like I said, I'm a fan of King James I, okay? He was a good king. At the same time, did it play out the way God wanted it? Probably. For sure it did. And he was doing, he in no way would be seen as bad in God's eyes because he spread God's word the farthest with the King James Bible. And the most accurate Bible. But that said, the Protestants were right. But the Protestants today, they're nothing like the people that came here. But it was all that what God really wanted to get across was that to follow his voice. And he knew that the governments, no matter how good they were, would stand in the way of that. Because what need is there for them? If everybody was following God's voice, and I know that seems hard to believe, but it's a real thing. That's where your freedom is actually found. You want your utopia and your freedom? I've said it before. Then you better start knowing Jesus Christ and following his voice. That's what will change the world.